Hi, Melanie.
Hey Joe, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I was just gathering some photos to post on my social media and I realized that I'm not sure what kind of captions to write.
Captions, copy, important stuff. Not all real estate agents are copywriters. So let's get into it. Some basic things they can know so they could write their own copy. We're not trying to make anybody experts here, but there are some fundamentals you could follow to make it easier so you're not thinking about it and then procrastinating about it and then not doing it. So what do you got?
Spot on. Well, the first overview of good copy and captions is just to think about the reader. Most people make the mistake when they're writing and they think about themselves and they say, I'm a realtor, I want to do this, I want to sell your house. But the best kind of copy that will resonate most with your audience is if you say, did you know you can save this much money? You can sell your house faster. You can do all these things. So even just switching that in your brain to think, okay, I'm going to think about who's reading this and I'm going to write this for them. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Cool. So once you're, in that mindset, there are 4 tips that we're going to give you today to write really compelling captions. You ready?
Okay. And once again, just review where we'll use this.
Anywhere. You can use this on your blog. You can use this when you're posting on your social media, on your business page. You can use this if you have an email list that you're sending it out to. You can even use this on a listing. And if you use these skills for the text, it's going to be more engaging and people are going to be more interested in reading about that property.
So would you say, as we do this, if you find good things to write, maybe save it on an Excel sheet or wherever else you could save, on Google Drive, so you could reference it later? Because as you just point out, a lot of these could be used across the board, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, an email list or whatever it may be.
Yeah, definitely. You can have a folder of, good examples that you've maybe swiped from someone else, or even if you've written something that you like, you can save it and in a couple months post it with some, change a few of the details. Most of your people won't know that you just copied that thing from 3 months ago.
True. All right, so let's go. What's number 1?
Okay, number 1 is a hook. A hook is a term to describe something that hooks you in. It's kind of like the opposite of a cliffhanger because it's something that when you read it, you're really enticed and you want to keep reading.
Okay, you got an example one?
I do. I'm glad you asked. Hooks that I like to use are the truth about buying a house or the secret solution to home buying. Stuff that makes people think, there's something that I don't know about this process. I'm interested. I want to learn more.
So like property values dropping with a question mark?
Very good. Question marks are really powerful because you automatically get the reader thinking, and if they're thinking, they're going to keep reading because they want the answer.
Because I was just thinking of that one because I know a lot of times people function through fear.
Yeah.
And they see that, they're like, whoa, hold on, let me see what that is.
Or even something like, want to know what your house is actually worth, and you can maybe put actually underlined or something, and then people are like, wow, maybe there's a mystery here that I don't know, but I want to solve it, so I'm going to keep reading.
Okay, good.
All right, step number 2 is use stories. Humans love stories. We're instinctively drawn into them. So if you can use a story as much as you can, it will help people. For example, you can say, yesterday I was with my client Joe and I was telling him about blah, 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 which is more interesting for the reader than just saying, hey, did you know blah, 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 because they're engaged in the story and they're putting themselves in that place and, it's more fun to read.
Especially if those stories are kind of relevant to the people you're talking to.
Definitely. So, property value, instead of just saying your property might not be valued what you think, you can tell a story about when you helped someone and they sold their property for $30,000 more than they were expecting or something like that.
Interesting you bring that up, and we haven't talked about this before the video, so I'm thinking off the fly, so excuse me here. But this brings up a memory somebody once taught me about convincing people to use a story and create a beautiful scenery and try and put that person in that place. For example, hey, if you sell your house, you have enough money for that trip to Hawaii, but then you don't just say that, you say, I was in Hawaii, I was drinking a margarita, I was on the beach. And they say, have you ever been to Hawaii? What do you think about Hawaii? And then you kind of make them say, that sounds pretty awesome. And they hear the story, and if you could kind of relate it to them and kind of hit certain cues, that'd be a good thing.
Yeah, spot on. Anytime you can get your reader to make themselves imagine that they're, in the certain position that you want them to believe, like, oh, imagine what life would be like if you could be sipping a margarita on the beach in Hawaii, they're going to be like, I want to do that. I'm going to keep reading. I want to hear what this person has to say.
Right, like you're creating a story that puts their mindset in a positive place, and then they're trying to make that connection between you and that positive feeling in that positive place. So there is a psychological method here that really convinces people that you're a good solution for them to get to that next level that people sometimes ignore. And great storytellers know this all too well.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up the word solution, because that's another thing is, I think our brains are kind of wired to look for problem solutions. So if you can always provide the solution, even if you also are the one presenting the problem, you want to position yourself as the authority, as the solution, as the one who can help your audience, whether it's buying a house, selling a house, or etc., getting them on a beach in Hawaii. You want to be the superhero of the story.
I love that, because I hate it when people just talk about problems. I love when people talk about solutions. And everybody says that's very cliche, but more often than not, you hear people complain, talk about problems. But if you're giving a story that shows them a solution to something that they could dream about, man, that's powerful.
It is powerful, and they'll remember that, and then they'll hire you.
Excellent.
So moving on to point number 3 is kind of, we touched about this, but make it about the reader, whether that's providing the solution to them or making them the main character in the story, or even just thinking, okay, well, I already know about how to get an FHA loan, but they don't, so I'm going to write it to the reader. Everyone, for the most part, is self-centered. They only think about themselves, their problems, their concerns. So when you're writing to them, you want to make it about them as much as possible.
Okay. Excellent.
And our last point is always end with an offer or a question. Whether that's, are you interested in selling your home, ? Or are you interested in learning more about how to appraise your house? Or, do you like margaritas in Hawaii? Anything that invites the reader to comment, to respond to your email, to reach out to you, because then, the point of all this is to get the conversation going so you can build or nurture that relationship and eventually help them out with their real estate needs.
That's such an excellent point, because I actually did a post about overcoming rejections, and the big thing it says is finish with a question. Finish with a question to kind of keep it going. One of the common ones is when people say, let me think about it. And then you say, well, what is it you're thinking about? Do you not see the value, or is it the price? Like, you're kind of engaging them. And I love the questions that give people options, not just this open-end thing. It kind of makes it easy for them to answer, because if you give these open-ended questions, people are like, I don't feel like writing a whole thing. But if you say, is it red? Is it blue? Is it the value? Is it the price? Is it the house, or is it the location? It's much easier for people to respond. So a little note about those questions.
Absolutely. And maybe not for social media captions, but if you're having a direct message with someone, that giving them 2 options things is super powerful. If you say, okay, do you want to talk on the phone tomorrow or Wednesday? Because then instead of saying, okay, well, do you want to talk on the phone at all? You're giving them only 2 choices to choose between, and either way, they're on a call with you.
And speaking of that, one of the most powerful ones, I love this one, is can I call you now? Because very often they're going to say, no, I'm a little busy. But what that leads into, it sets up the stage for, okay, not now, but how about in an hour? Or how about tomorrow? You're like, okay, sounds good. It's kind of like shoot for the stars, hit a moon. Did I say that wrong? Or is it the other way around? Do you shoot for the moon, hit the star? Something like that. But you get the idea. One of the most powerful ones I learned when selling is, can I call you now? And if they say yes, you're almost like, oh, okay. But you talk to them, obviously. But more often than not, it sets up a standard where they're going to want to set an appointment. And it's all done with that, what you're saying, that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good one. Really, really good psychological trick. Not trick, but thing to say to get them on the phone.
Yeah. All right, so review those 4 real quick.
So to recap, the first one is to start with a hook, something that entices your reader. Then you want to tell a story. And third, connect that story to the reader in some way, whether you're making them the character in the story or just, relating it, oh, if you know someone like this, etc. And then always end with an offer or a question of some sort.